love you long time. Progressives at war with Asians for being too white. I'm Dr. Duke, and this is the Dr. Duke Show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show, the only program that keeps you educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. Katie is off today. Before we start, I want to ask everyone to please download our new Freedom Project media app. We're producing 17 new shows a week, and we've got much more content on the way. Simply search Freedom Project Media in your app store and make sure to allow for notifications. Joined now by Vicki McKenna for our weekly Culture Cast segment. Vicki, thanks for joining us.
Good to be here.
Boy, isn't it interesting how Asian Americans are upturning the apple cart? On the one hand, if you've been paying attention over the last 4 or 5 months, we've seen a number of videos where elderly Asians in California are being punched out, sucker punched by primarily African Americans for reasons we don't know. And there's violence being directed at the Asian American community. At the other side of the ledger, Asians are being discriminated against in terms of getting into places like Harvard and Yale. They're just too darn good at school, and it's starting to drive the progressive left nuts. So they're being held out of school even though they have the right credentials. And they are minorities. They're not white. And so a lot going on in the Asian American community. Let's talk about this.
So what I think you're seeing now, first off, for a long, long time, the left considered Asian Americans and Asian immigrants as white. They were proxies for white people. And so, if they did better in school, then they were going to actually have a burden to overcome even greater than, normal admittance requirements for various different colleges. And I think that's what you saw at Harvard. The Asian American students applying saying, we need an SAT score that's 50 points higher than the white kid's SAT score and, substantially higher than the black kid's SAT score. And we're saying that's discrimination. And for a long, long time, the left was completely okay with basically treating Asian people as super white people, right? Like whiter than white supremacy. And they realized that they kicked to the curb, I think, my opinion, a voting bloc. And I think what you see now is the left attempting to harness the Asian American voting bloc, because it is up for grabs. It's a very independent voting bloc, into service to social justice. So even though you're exactly right, you've got all of these attacks on people, particularly elderly Asian people, and it's not by white people. And you do have leftist professors who basically call Asian people white supremacists. You have someone scratching their head saying, oh my goodness, we're blowing off a voting bloc here. So let's see if we can't find a way to rectify the problem. Trump comes out, talks about China negatively. All of a sudden, a door opens and the left thinks it can seize an opportunity to seize the Asian voting bloc.
Yeah, of course, all this violence against Asians is now Trump's fault, nobody else's fault. The irony. I mean, Trump is for 30 years now, he's going to be blamed for everything. But I remember learning about post-World War II America, where you had a similar situation with Jewish Americans who were considered white, but also considered a minority in many circles because of what they had suffered here and in places like Nazi Germany. And so white Jewish kids were getting into colleges, and there was a lot of consternation because there were too many of them, right? And so we had to mitigate their success and their hard work so that other kinds of Americans could get in. And then we have Allison Collins on the other side of the spectrum. She is a school board member in San Francisco, one of the goofiest, if not the goofiest, public school board in any place in this country. And she came out and said what a lot of leftists think. She said that basically Asian Americans are tricksters, literally. How's that for a racist construction? That they are playing the game. They have learned how to become white. They've learned how to pass. Right. They're appropriating white supremacist strategies, i.e. studying hard. When did we get to the point that studying hard and working as hard as you can to be good at things like math, when did that become now a white supremacist strategy to screw over blacks and Hispanics?
Well, I'll say right around 2012. I think when when you first had the inclinations of the formation of Black Lives Matter. It wasn't officially formed as a group at that time, but that sensibility has been insinuated in higher education for a long time. This idea that model minority, that's what Asian people are, supposedly a model minority. They model white culture. And so that was another way the left, I think, gave themselves an excuse to discriminate against Asian people as well, is that they act white. And that's the derisive commentary that the left has been practicing for years, and targeting Asian Americans. You get to Stop Asian Hate, hashtag Stop Asian Hate. And where does that come from? It's a 100% about face. I think that's driven by the fact that Asian people are a potent voting bloc in the United States. They think they've got an opportunity. They've got now, second, third, fourth generation Asian Americans, and they think that they can, harness them into service of social justice. Most of these kids have gone through the school system, the public school system that has been preaching this stuff for decades. So I think it's ripe. I think they think that the propaganda is ripe for the execution, and that's what we're seeing right now.
Well, there never has been an Asian plantation that Democrats can exploit, so they're trying to create one now. Vicki,
correct. Yeah, it's a good point.
After the break, let's continue this. I have a couple more questions to ask you. Okay, back again for part two of my conversation with Vicki McKenna on CultureCast. Vicki, go back to this Allison Collins now. So on the one hand, liberals are trying to paternalistically wrap their arms around the Asian community and say, there, stop achieving so much, start playing the victim, start lowering your kids' test scores, and we'll welcome you as a full-fledged minority and take care of you. Or you can keep acting white and we'll call you out. This Allison Collins actually used the word house, N-I-G-G, you know the word, called Asian Americans house blanks because of the way that they were using success and opportunity in this country. Here's my thought. This is a huge backhanded compliment for white Americans. What she's basically saying, Allison Collins, that the reason whites have gotten ahead is because of hard work and the Protestant worth ethic, basically. They've gotten ahead because they've worked real hard. Asians have emulated that. Traitors to the big plantation version of race, and so they're succeeding too. In a way, isn't the left just basically saying that all that opportunity that we on the right keep talking about, it is there, and anybody who wants to access it, who can, no matter what their color is?
Oh, for sure. It exposes the racial lie, the racialist lie that the left continually tells. And Asian American kids and their parents are not easily put in the victimhood category. And I think this is just an effort by the left to get them to choose victimhood. You love bomb people when they have become victims, right? When suddenly you're a victim, then all of a sudden we care so much about you and we're going to have hashtags for you and march with banners for you to try to get people comfortable with the attention that being a victim entails. I think a lot of people who are in the victimhood classes are comfortable being there because it gives them a lot of attention, a lot of positive reinforcement, a lot of positive attention, and excuses for failure. And I think they think, well, we've had these kids in our classrooms for a few generations now. They should be pretty well pre-chewed, for a pitch to join us on the victimhood, on the USS victimhood. And I think that's what you're seeing. So it remains to be seen, though, whether the Asian American culture, the subculture of that ethnicity in the United States is strong enough to withstand the siren song of intersectional victimhood. And I don't know. It is interesting to me that the left is making a hard play for it when only, months ago, they were basically calling Asian American people white supremacists. But you see them really sticking with this Atlanta story. Even though it has nothing to do with race, you have them thinking that this is the first launch, maybe, very much like the Trayvon Martin story or very much like the Michael Brown story. The first really hardcore story we're going to push to try to set this narrative, and I don't think you're going to see it slow anytime soon.
Yeah, my big concern is, as we know, first generation Americans, those are of any race, those are the ones who tend to be more conservative, a little bit more cautious, less willing to play into all of these larger political narratives. They're sort of finding their way. It's the kids and the grandkids, the ones, like you said, who are pre-chewed in the government schools. The younger Asians are the ones who are becoming more like the typical left-wing social justice warrior. So I don't know. No other culture has been able to survive after a few generations without being hooked into the left. I find it difficult to imagine that the Asian American culture will. And don't forget, think about what the left does with African Americans who are hardworking, all about liberty, all about freedom. People like Clarence Thomas, people like Candace Owen, people like Condoleezza Rice. If you're a black person who accesses through your own hard work and intelligence the American freedoms, the American dream, then they hate you just as much as they hate anybody else.
You're a multiracial white supremacist. That's actually a phrase. Multiracial white supremacist. You can't make it. You can't make any of it make sense. But listen, government schools. You have, particularly with Asian American kids, they have their parents have a high, respect and ethic that values education. These kids are going to college. They are going through the same meat grinder that you see every single day you go to work, Duke. It is education through lenses. It's not just knowledge for knowledge's sake. It's about political propaganda and harnessing students into social activism and political activism. Why should the Asian American kids, escape that? I mean, what would make them escape that any more than any other kid who would be setting foot on an American college campus could?
It seems to me, Vicki, the takeaway from all of this is that what used to be the American dream, come here, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, suffer a little bit, work hard, and you'll get rich down the road, has been replaced with the American dream now is getting on the dole, not having to work. Anybody but white people are entitled. White people are the problem. That seems to be the new formulation of the American dream.
Yeah, $1,400 stimulus checks, universal basic income.
Joined now by Tina Griffin, the counterculture mom. Well, the propaganda arm of the left-wing progressive army cult in this country has rallied around banning Dr. Seuss, banning Peter Pan, banning Little Horton, Here's a Who. You're not allowed to watch The Swiss Family Robinson. Is a no-go. So what are these kids going to be doing sitting in their bedrooms alone? They're going to be reading the new kids book about Dr. Fauci.
Yeah, that's about it. Hi, I'm Dr. Fauci, and I want to get rid of 95% of the population through vaccines. And while we're at it, we're going to put 1, 2, maybe 17 masks on your face to trash your immune system. By the way, I made the most cash ever last year, $2 million during this COVID pandemic that I actually helped orchestrate. Dr. Duke, I cannot tell you enough about Dr. Fauci. I've been following this guy personally for the last 40 years. He's behind a lot of corruption. This brand new book, Dr. Fauci, How a Boy from Brooklyn Became America's Doctor by Kate Messner, was just released. Kate, you are way off track on who Dr. Fauci really is. This is major brainwashing. The other thing I want to point out is Dr. Fauci has not seen a patient since 1968. So doctor in his name is also something that I just don't like to say together. I don't believe he is a doctor.
Well, there's so many things wrong with this. The uncritical way we're looking at Fauci here, that when Fauci makes mistakes, when Fauci engages in double talk, when Fauci turned out to be wrong, that's okay. Because, science is a process. The same stick they beat Donald Trump to death with, right? Everything Donald Trump did that the left didn't like, it was anti-science, it was unforgivable, the data is the data. Listen to the double talk from the author of this book. It's pretty shocking.
Well, for kids, one of Dr. Fauci's biggest takeaways, I think, is that science is a process, and we're always learning more and always understanding more, and we're going to make mistakes when we're trying to figure things out, and it's really important to be able to look at new information with an open mind and revise those ideas, which is something that was especially relevant during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Yeah, when Donald Trump was talking about hydrochloroquine, no go, you're going to kill people, no open mind, everyone's going to die. Now, hydrochloroquine is recognized as one of those things that does help ameliorate the virus. But no forgiveness when it was Donald Trump. But with Fauci, isn't it interesting? The one thing that she wants to tell moms and dads is not about how brilliant he is, how he saved the country, but how there's a reason why he was wrong so often, and it's called science.
I just can't believe it. And the crazy thing is, he doesn't follow his own science. I mean, first he said no masks necessary. Then he said one. Then he went back to no masks. Now he's saying 2 or 3 or 17. That's the hypocrisy that drives me crazy, where you can obviously see this guy does not know science. And he recently admitted, quote, there's no data that indicates that the mask is going to make a difference. The crazy thing is, CDC also released evidence from 14 randomized control trials that said the use of non-pharmaceutical measures such as face masks did not support a substantial effect on transmission. People are still getting COVID even while wearing a face mask, even while separating 14 feet from the other person. And the World Health Organization said in 2019 that there's no evidence that face masks are effective in reducing transmission. So it's only literally, as many medical health professionals are now saying, the best way is to not have masks on your face because it actually wreaks havoc on your immune system.
So Fauci was wrong. He doubled talk. He made mistakes. He doubled back. He doubled down on his mistakes. He's still talking in ways that the CDC and the WHO don't agree with. He made millions of dollars off of this virus, and he's got a book written about him, and he won awards from Hollywood. All that in spite of all of that death, 500,000, 600,000 dead. Trump, simply for following his own guy, he's the one who hired Fauci and implementing much of what Fauci said. Somehow Donald Trump is responsible for that 600,000. Not one of them is the responsibility of Fauci. You've created this insipid book to brainwash kids. And take a look at the book, this book blurb from the New York Post about the book. Young readers will also get a timeline, recommended reading, and the full spread of facts about vaccines and how they work, and Dr. Fauci's own tips for future scientists. Can you imagine what that's going to be like? So don't worry about right and wrong, kids. Don't worry about wearing your masks when you go to Yankee Stadium either, because when the cameras aren't rolling, nobody really wears them. Can you imagine his tips for science?
That's exactly what's so such hypocrisy about this whole thing. I've seen so many video clips over the last 2 years, I'm sure you have as well, where these people are on camera with the mask and they don't know the cameras weren't still running, and they're quickly trying to strip off their mask when they notice that. They literally are not wearing masks 24/7. It's very hypocritical. And the crazy thing is, with all of this, a lot of people lost their jobs. There's a lot of depression, suicide skyrocketing. I do not deem Fauci appropriate for giving medical advice. Obviously, there's been no history for 40 years seeing a patient.
He's being rewarded for being an architect of the way to get Americans to surrender their freedom. He is a hero to the left because he was the major player in forcing civil liberties to take a backseat to the weird aspirations of pandemic tyrants.
Absolutely. Download that Counterculture Mom app, and you will definitely know the latest trending news stories like this one, as well as all the other pop culture brainwashing tactics Hollywood has for your kids. Get that app, sign up for premium, and you'll have exactly what you need throughout the week to know what lies are being pumped out on mainstream media.
It's time for some real education at the Dr. Duke Show. As you know, this is Socialism Sucks Week on the Dr. Duke Show. I want to repeat that one more time because it just sounds so glorious. Socialism Sucks Week on the Dr. Duke Show. All week long, I've been reading quotes from various intellectuals that point out the hypocrisy, the double standards, the laughability, the intellectual dishonesty of socialist movements like the ones we're seeing in this country to undo our constitutional republic. It's already been undone, actually, and to move us down the cozy, destructive road of socialism. Today's quote is from Theodore Dalrymple, and I think it's a good one. It reads, "Apart from the massacres, deaths, and famines for which communism and socialism was responsible, the worst thing about the system was the official lying. That is to say, the lying in which everyone was forced to take a part, repeating by repetition, repeating the lies, assenting to the lies, failure to contradict the lies. I came to the conclusion that the purpose of propaganda in communist countries was not to persuade, much less inform, but to humiliate and emasculate. In this sense, the less true it was, the less it corresponded in any way to reality, the better. The more it contradicted the experience of the persons to whom it was directed, The more docile, self-despising for their failure to protest, and more impotent they became. This is a really great observation. All of my friends on the conservative side are just stunned when they look around and they see the lies, blaming Trump for anti-Asian virus because he once used the word China virus, when meanwhile you have young African-American men cold-cocking these Asian senior citizens in the street. Blaming Trump for that is absurd. The lies of the border, right? You're using cages. The cages Obama created for children are being used by Biden. Obama was never blamed for them. Biden's being lied about and not held responsible for him. Only Trump, apparently, is guilty. This is exactly what Mr. Dalrymple says, right? That the lies that we all have to engage in, the lies that the media engage in, that social media engages in, the lies of our journalists, the lies of our Democrat politicians, repeated again and again and again and again. Donald Trump is killing Asian people. It has nothing to do with anything in reality. But the more you repeat it, the more you say it, the more it emasculates, the more it destroys truth, the more it humiliates those people. No one's convinced by the lies of Nancy Pelosi, but the more she repeats them, the more the media repeats them, the more your journalist repeats them and our politicians repeat them, the more humiliated those who know what truth is. This is a dangerous gambit. It is 100% socialist, and that's where your country has gone. All right, just a quick reminder to please download our brand new Freedom Project Media app. You get access to all 17 new shows a week, plus our entire library of content. Simply search Freedom Project in your app store and make sure to allow notifications so we can ping you when a new show comes down to you. And if you're a fan of the show, also please consider a one-time tax-deductible donation to support our Patriot Club, and we'll send you our signature tumbler. And here it is on my desk. Visit patriotclub.us, that's patriotclub.us. And that's going to do it for this show. Now make sure you go download the Freedom Project app. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. Stay educated, my friends, despite socialism.